Hi, friend, and welcome back to Marvelous Friends, your home for all things Marvel Cinematic Universe and beyond. I'm Rhett, and today I want to dive a little bit deeper into the Mandarin's role in the MCU. Roll that credit. Just as a quick recap of the Mandarin and his role in the MCU, we do know he exists and he is out there, though I know we did have a version of him in Iron Man 3. But according to All Hail the King, a short that was released after the film, there was a real Mandarin out there, and he was not pleased with how he was portrayed by the fake terrorist version of him, which means that he has been looming out there in the background of the MCU, just waiting for his chance to reappear. And as I predicted in my plot prediction for the upcoming Shang-Chi film, which you can see up here in the card, I said that most likely we'd see the Mandarin kind of replace Fu Manchu in this upcoming film, and that was a theory that was proven correct this last weekend at San Diego Comic-Con. In the MCU, the Ten Rings, which is associated with the Mandarin, has primarily been seen as a terrorist organization. The truest version of this being from Iron Man 1, where we see Raza and his men are representing the Ten Rings as we see his logo behind them in the ransom video of Tony Stark. Now, of course, this was the same logo that the fake Mandarin used in Iron Man 3. However, again, we know that that was just a phony and the real one does exist. We also know that in Iron Man 2 that the Mandarin and the Ten Rings to some degree assisted Whiplash in his efforts in that film as well, helping him escape, capture, and then funding him to some degree to take down their shared mutual enemy of Tony Stark. Now, this has primarily been in the Iron Man franchises, and quite a few of those movies at this point are rather old. However, they have been sticking around as a Ten Rings agent appeared along several of the Hydra agents that were interested in purchasing the Yellow Jacket suit at its presentation during the first Ant-Man film, meaning they've been here all along and are still very present working in the shadows. Now, this is established pretty well that the Ten Rings is a terrorist organization similar to that of Hydra working in the background to kind of pull some strings. However, that isn't necessarily 100% true to comics' origin story. In the comics, the Ten Rings of the Mandarin actually are physical rings. They each of them have a specific power that they grant to their wielder, and I will kind of just give a quick rundown of what each of those are. Now, I will include down in the description a link to where you can find the whole article that describes the Ten Rings, and it goes a lot more in depth to what each of these rings do, excuse me. So definitely check that out if you want to read that. I'm just going to kind of give the quick and easy version of it. Starting on the left hand with the pinky, this provides ice blasts. The ring finger provides a magnification of psychic energy. The middle finger provides an electric blast. Then we have a flame blast on the index finger of the left hand, and the thumb provides a kind of blinding white light. Moving to the right hand, on the pinky we have the opposite of the left hand thumb ring. This is a blackout, instant dark light. On the left we have a kind of a disintegration to the molecular level ability. In the middle finger we have a vortex. It also provides flight. And then on the index finger here we have a sonic blast. And then finally on the right thumb we have molecular rearrangement, which allows him to kind of restructure what things are, though he cannot necessarily create something completely new out of nothing. And that is one caveat of that ring's ability. These powers within each of the rings actually come from an ancient warrior spirit that is contained within them. Now, these were created by the Wan, and they're actually just alien tech cylinders that have some kind of AI system within them that resemble earthly rings, and is why when the Mandarin found them, that's why he thought they were and put them on as such. Now, these were brought to Earth by the Axon Car, a spaceship of the Wan, who crashed here a long time ago and later was discovered by the Mandarin himself. Now, I'd be very interested to see if they introduce this idea of the rings actually being the rings, or if they just keep it the terrorist organization that it currently is in the MCU. I really do hope we get to see these to some degree, and it's just this kind of set of power rings is where he got the name for his terrorist organization that we are seeing in this iteration. And if we do see these rings, I hope we really do get some of this kind of background of them, considering the subtitle of the film is Legend of the Ten Rings. So that's just kind of what I'm hoping now as well, along with everything else I previously mentioned for the film. So it'd be very interesting to see what final direction MCU and Marvel Studios takes the Ten Rings themselves. Because I personally really see that this could fit both aspects of it as we continue on the idea of this organization that is far-reaching, something that we've really only seen the tip of the iceberg of, and then we learn that eventually that this comes from the inspiration of the rings that he wears himself. And I think it would go a lot further than this. I think there's a lot of ways that we can use these ideas of the rings along with the terrorist organization that would really play out very well in the MCU. I bring this up and mention this because it comes from the idea that we've seen a very heavy use of the idea of rings, accessories, and stuff like that with those who are associated with the Mandarin and his organization. Now, for example, in Iron Man specifically, we see two people sporting very large black jeweled rings. Raza is often seen twiddling a pinky ring with a black jewel, and Obadiah too has a very prominent large black jeweled ring on his left ring finger. Now, this doesn't really have any established connection between the two, but it is very interesting to know, as potentially there was more than just a random business transaction as to why Obadiah chose Raza and his men to kidnap Tony. And it's perhaps because both of them are connected via the Ten Rings organization, and Obadiah actually had a larger role to play in that organization as a whole. Now, this could be something that we very much so could see play out in the future as we move forward, with basically the Mandarin having 10 associates that make up his inner circle, that kind of the circular ring that makes up the logo, with each of them having one of these big black jeweled rings that allows us to kind of identify them moving forward. I think it is very interesting to note here, kind of a side point, that actually in the original script, Obadiah was supposed to survive his fall, as he wasn't really technically the main villain originally for the film. It was actually in the original script that the Mandarin was supposed to make an appearance as the main villain, and Obadiah was just kind of a secondary character. Now, I think this was a very smart move by Marvel Studios back then. It had been very kind of extreme to explore this idea of these super-powered rings so early in the MCU, especially when you start getting into the details about how they're technically alien tech, which means aliens exist. It would have been a very jarring story to everyone so early in the MCU's adaptation. However, now at this point, aliens and alien tech is such second nature to everyone who's watching the MCU that it would fit much better at this time. So I think it's really smart that they've held off to introduce them to this point. And I think it would flow much easier as well. And who knows? Maybe we find that Obadiah actually is still alive and is still a member of the Inner Circle, and that he's just been in hiding all these years. Specifically, during the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., perhaps some of the Ten Rings agents were able to sneak him out and keep him in hiding. His initial plane crash whole cover-up was not just to cover up his death, but instead to explain his disappearance when S.H.I.E.L.D. brought him into one of their secret prisons. I think continuing this idea would be a fantastic Easter egg hunt for us as an audience, with us looking to kind of figure out who is who and who is wearing these rings and are connected to the Mandarin, allowing for us to kind of connect the dots on our own without them really having to be spelled out by the Marvel Studios in each film. For instance, we could see that David Harbour's Red Guardian is wearing a ring, confirming him as part of the KGB, and potentially Leviathan is a member of the Inner Circle as well. This would allow us to kind of really establish the Mandarin as the main kind of overarching villain of all the stories right now, without him or his lackeys or his direct mention having to be in each of the films. Simply putting a ring on the titled villain of that single episode within the MCU would kind of establish that, oh, okay, he is part of the Ten Rings, he's part of the Mandarin's organization, I get that, but he's also doing his own thing as well. I think that would be just a kind of nice tie-in and establishment for the character moving forward. Now, there is also this idea that the Mandarin is perhaps not only entering in Shang-Chi's film, but kind of replacing Shang-Chi's previous usual opponent of Fu Manchu. Fu Manchu actually is Shang-Chi's father in the comic books, so it'd be very interesting to see if they use the Mandarin in this as well, making him Shang-Chi's father. This is kind of a crucial point to Shang-Chi's story, that his father is the main enemy, so it would hopefully make sense that they would go ahead and do this. And this would add some additional interesting tie-ins to other franchises and whatnot that I think could be really fun to explore. Now, I touched on one of these slightly in that original plot prediction video. Again, go check it out. But this deals specifically with the character Midnight Sun. And let's dive into this just a little bit more real quick. Again, in the comics, Midnight Sun is the adoptive brother of Shang-Chi, having been raised by Fu Manchu from a young age. Now, Midnight Sun comes from a small African village, which he is left the only survivor after a raid by MI6, who is out to take down the forces of Fu Manchu. Now, in the comics, of course, we would see this changed up just a little bit. Here, this would be a Mandarin base of operations on the African continent instead of a Fu Manchu one, and we could actually see this tie into Black Panther very well, whereas instead of just making this a random African tribe, it could be one of the Wakandan tribes specifically, which has been infiltrated by the Mandarin in this case a long time ago, and actually potentially see some issues that this tribe is causing for the Wakandan nationals and the Black Panther as a whole. And this would then make, of course, Midnight Sun Wakandan on his own right within the MCU, which I think would be a very interesting tie-in and move forward with all of that within the MCU. And again, it makes a great tie-in and a relatable storyline between the Mandarin and Black Panther, which we know is coming at some point, not in the next 3 years, but potentially at the tail end of Phase 4 or the beginning of Phase 5, however that kind of break happens. I am very excited for this adaptation of the character, and I, like I said in my plot prediction for this, do hope that the MCU decides to make the Mandarin Shang-Chi's father and replace him as Fu Manchu in the comic books. Now, I would love to know what you think, though, about this story and what all potential it has as a tie-in to everything. Do you like the idea of the Mandarin, and are you excited to see him, and how would you like to see him and his 10 rings adopted? Do you want to keep it just as a terrorist organization, or do you want to see the physical rings as well? And of course, I'd love to know what you think about the father situation. Do you want him just to be a villain, or do you like the idea of him being Shang-Chi's father? Let me know all that down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and a share. I really do appreciate it. And of course, subscribe and set those alerts so you catch all my future videos. Until then, though, I love you all 3000. I hope you have a marvelous rest of your day. Bye, friend.